Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm working on this 2011 Chevy Equinox. I've done several videos on this vehicle doing numerous things. This video was unplanned, and what happened was yesterday I was driving and I had a notification on the dash saying service battery charging system. So when I got home and was able to check, I grabbed my voltmeter and I checked the voltage at the battery while it was running, and it was around 11.3 volts. So that led me to believe that the alternator was bad. So I went ahead and ordered an alternator and picked it up today. And when I got home, after driving another vehicle to work, I came home and I started this up and pulled it in and noticed that the information on the dash was not there as it was yesterday. So I checked the voltage today and it was 15.3 volts or something like that. So to go from 11 volts to 15 volts, I still believe there's an issue with the alternator. So today I'm going to show you how to change the alternator in a second generation Equinox V6. I think the 3.0 is what this is, but I believe there's a 3.5 as well, and this should cover that. I believe they run on the same block, or at least the same setup. So I'm going to go ahead and show you this journey. I looked on YouTube for videos and I didn't see any for this vehicle specifically. I did see some for the 4-cylinder, so hopefully this will help somebody else out. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Well, as you can tell, I've already taken the old alternator out, so I just wanted, before we get started on the video, I want to show you what tools you're going to want. You're going to want a 15mm ratcheting wrench, preferably. Otherwise, the bolt that goes here is going to be a pain. Then a regular 15mm wrench because of the offset here, again for this bolt here, and then a socket or ratchet and a socket, again also for this bolt, and then a 13mm for getting the lug off of the alternator for the wire that goes to the battery. So I just wanted to get this in the video early, so you know what tools you need. Alright, so the first thing we need to do is remove this engine cover to do an assessment as to what tools we're going to need. And there's a bolt here that's a 10mm, and then we need to take this off, the oil fill cap, in order to get the engine cover off. And I've already removed the 10mm that's here, so I'm going to remove the oil fill cap. I'm going to go ahead and place this back on. So I'll bring in to see what I'm looking at. So the alternator is here, and I don't think I have good enough light to show you down here, but looks like the bolts might not be too bad to get to. I'm thinking there's two here, one here, and I might be jacking this up to get to the bottom, but we've got our wire that goes to the battery and then a plug here, and that's all that hooks up to the alternator. But we do need to get the serpentine belt off, and there doesn't look to be too much clearance here. It looks like we're going to be accessing the tensioner from underneath. I went ahead and pulled the car up on ramps, and we're going to go underneath. So here is the new alternator, and I'm going to try to show you a couple things before we get going. So right here there's 2 holes for bolts, which if you look here, it's pretty simple. The 2 bolts are here and here. Right here though, from underneath, it appears there's an idler pulley that's bolted in right here. So we're going to have to get the tensioner pulley loose, pull the belt off, get the bolt out of here, and then pull these 2 bolts out from up top. And so now I'm going to go underneath and show you what I'm talking about as far as the tensioner pulley and the idler pulley. So it's going to be pretty difficult. Try to zoom in. This is the idler pulley, or I'm sorry, the tensioner pulley, and then maybe over here. Right there is the idler pulley that's mounted to the alternator. Right now what I'm going to try to do is get the tensioner pulley loose and get the belt off so I can start disassembling this area right here. Unfortunately, I don't have a good way of filming this since I'm holding this by hand, so I'll just try to come back as quick as I can and show you what I'm doing. Something else I want to show you is there's a panel right here that can come off. So you got the panel here, and then the subframe is right here. If I take this off, it'll make me feel good and make me feel like I have a lot of room, but really that only gives you access to the crank pulley, and I can still reach in behind here, you know, pretty easily. So I don't really see this as a need to remove this. So maybe I'll go ahead and remove this and show you for the video. It might be a better representation. Alright, so here we are from the same angle. I've got this panel removed, and like I said, I really don't have a lot better, I don't have any more access to this pulley here, the tensioner pulley, but I definitely have a better view. For illustration purposes or visual purposes, I will be taking that idler pulley and pulling it so I can get the belt off, and then I'll start trying to get to the idler pulley that's mounted to the alternator. I'm not sure if you can see, I've actually got the belt loose. Use the 1/2-inch breaker bar to get the belt tensioner loose to where I can get the belt off. Unfortunately though, now it is actually stuck between the subframe here and the frame down here. Okay, so I want to show you something important. If we come up here just a little bit toward the front of the car, there's a hole right here, and I can fit my hand all the way up in here and reach the idler pulley and the bottom bolt on the alternator very easily with this wrench. So I just want to show you that because I can't really film. I'm taking the lower bolt off of the alternator that has the idler pulley on it, and so when I'm done with that, I'll come back and I'll show you what I can there. So here you can see I've got the wrench on the idler pulley, and I've already broken it loose, but you can see that I really have no issues with room. I'll just keep turning that until I get off. If you have a gear wrench, that would be amazing in this position. If you had a regular wrench only, this would be kind of a pain. This is a 15 millimeter. If you need to go buy one for this job, I would definitely suggest it. It's a lot cheaper than paying somebody else to do it. So I'm going to get this out of here, and then we'll jump to the top side. Alright, so I have the bolt completely loose from here. And it looks like we're in a bad place, right? I mean, well, if I can't get the bolt out, then what are we going to do? It's actually still in the housing of the alternator, so when we pull the alternator out, this is going to come with it. I'll try to show you another view here, and I'm not sure how good this is showing, but the bolt is still in that housing of the alternator, but not on the actual mounting bracket. So we're going to pull this out with the idler pulley and the bolt still in it. I'll show you that on the next step here when we take the 2 bolts out from the top. Now we're ready to take the 2 bolts off at the top here, this one and that one. But before we do that, we're going to get the, I think there's a nut under here very well, and it's looking like maybe a 13 millimeter. Alright, so I did confirm that this is a 13 millimeter. Because the battery, this is hooked directly to the battery, you probably want to unhook the battery. And luckily we're pushing against plastic, so I opted not to unplug the battery, which is probably a bad idea, but I advise you at home to unplug the battery, unhook the battery, in case this wire touches anything that grounds out. And I'll do something to cover it while we're switching these out. But anyway, we're going to take that cable off. I think there's probably a washer on here. So as I move this, oh, nope, no washer. Okay, so now we've got the cable off, and we just have this plug, which appears to just be a, yeah, just a plug where you push on this top part and it releases. So now we are good to go ahead and remove the 2 bolts. Alternator should come out, I would say, with relative ease, and we're probably going to be pulling it up through this area right here. I don't see another avenue for it to come out easily. Alright, so just to show you here, this bolt here you can get to with a wrench. I was using the ratcheting wrench on this just fine, but I think you can see there's a support right here that really makes using a wrench difficult. So what I have is, I believe this is like a 1-inch extension, and I can actually get that behind this hose here and then onto the socket. So that's what I'm going to use now. With the correct socket. That was a 16 and it's a 15. Alright, so that furthest bolt that I showed you earlier that had that support in the middle, I ended up using a socket, a gear wrench, and a regular offset wrench. So this is probably what actually I used at the very end to get that bolt off. So now I've only got 1 bolt left, and I'm going to be using the gear wrench because I've got plenty of clearance here. So currently it's wedged in here between these 2 coil lines, but I'm going to go ahead and grab the idler pulley. I guess I'll check its condition while I sleep on how I'm going to put this back. Anyway, there's the idler pulley. And now, let's gotta figure out how to get this up and out of here. Alright, so I'm fooling with this a little bit more, and I think I'm about to get it out, and I'm really just pulling up on it. I've got my arm in behind the upper radiator hose down in here pushing up on it, and it's about there. I'll go ahead and bring you in close. So let me back up here. So you can see it's up against this AC line right here, this AC line here, and up against the block down here. So that's what I'm struggling with, is getting through here, and it's really just manipulating these hoses here to get it out. It's a baby boy. That's probably the easiest alternator I've ever taken out. Whew. Can't wait to put the new baby boy back in. I'll probably just go ahead and try it right now. Here's the new one. Por favor. Oh. Before you return to this bar, we have factory check. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and try to squeeze this back in. Yeah, and I'd say it's probably the easiest alternator I've ever replaced. Nothing to it. Just 3 bolts, tensioner, and just pull it right out. No biggie. So now that I've got it in the hole, need to put the idler pulley on, which actually should be a lot easier than pulling with everything I just did. So I'm going to try to wedge this at an angle where I can put the bolt in for the idler pulley. Okay, got the idler pulley bolt put back into the alternator. So now I'm just going to go ahead and put these bolts back in on the top side. I'm just going to put them in loosely, and I'm going to call it a night, and then come back tomorrow and get it buttoned up. I know it seems like a pretty lame place to leave off, but it's getting late and I'm tired, so it's just how it's going to be. Alright, so I think that does it for this evening. Come back tomorrow and we'll get this knocked out. Alright, so I've got the alternator in place. I've gone ahead and put the bolts in. I've shown you where the bolts are located when I was taking it out, so I just put the bolts back in. their respective locations, and now all that's left is plugging in the plug on top of the alternator and putting the battery cable back on the alternator. And then I just have to put the belt back on. Okay, so that's a 13 millimeter. I'm going to go ahead and tighten it and get the belt on, and that'll probably be the end of the video. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the comments below. One thing I would like to note, this hose right here is the biggest hurdle, and you can see how close it runs to the alternator. And then this span right here is the only area to get the alternator out. So I imagine a shop would probably take this hose off after evacuating the refrigerant, but in a pinch it's possible to do without unhooking that. It's pretty tedious and kind of time consuming, but all in all, it is something you can do in your garage. Alright, so we've got the old alternator out, new one in, and we should be good to go. Everything is buttoned back up, all the bolts are tight, the belt's back on, and I'm going to go ahead and start it and make sure everything's good. If this video was helpful, please give it a thumbs up, and if you have any questions or comments, leave them in the comment section, and I'd be happy to get back with you. Thanks for watching.